Algebra 2, Target 4, I can graph a quadratic equation. Day 2, our focus is on intercept form. Intercept form for quadratic equations is y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. And what's nice about intercept forms is we can find the x-intercepts just by looking at the equation. For y equals a times x minus p times x minus q, our intercepts, our x-intercepts are p and q. So we can look at the graph and we know that on the x-axis it's going to cross at the point p and the point q. Another nice thing about intercept form, as we look at it, remember that all parabolas have symmetry, so we know that halfway between the two intercepts, we're going to find our axis of symmetry. So in order to find the axis of symmetry, we average our intercepts. So we can tell our intercepts real quickly just by glancing, and then we can calculate the axis of symmetry. Then once we know the axis of symmetry, we can find the vertex by simply substituting in the axis of symmetry into our equation. So let's look at a few examples here. So example 1, y equals 2 times x plus 3 times x minus 1. So first off, what are our intercepts? Right? Remember the equation is a times x minus p times x minus q. Right? Well, we can see that p, or negative p and 3 are together. So that means p, one of our intercepts, is negative 3. And the other intercept, negative q and negative 1 are together. The other intercept, q equals 1. So I'm going to identify those as my intercepts. I'm going to plot them, negative 3 and 1. And then I also know that my axis of symmetry is halfway between those. So I'm going to find the axis of symmetry by averaging those. The axis of symmetry is negative 3 plus 1 over 2. Negative 3 plus 1 is negative 2. Negative 2 divided by 2 is negative 1. So my axis of symmetry is at negative 1. Once I know that, I can plug negative 1 in to find my vertex. So y equals 2, negative 1 plus 3 times negative 1 minus 1. All right, clean that up. We got 2 times 2 times negative 2. So my vertex, the y value, is negative 8. My vertex is at negative 1, negative 8. I got my intercepts, I got my vertex. Connect the parabola through those. There is my quadratic function. So you can quickly identify your intercepts, use that to calculate my vertex, and then I have enough points I can draw it. Let's look at another example. Let's look at an application here. The path of a place-kicked football can be modeled by the function y equals negative 0.026x times x minus 46, where x is horizontal distance and y is corresponding height. How far is the football kicked? All right, so let's look at this. We can find our intercepts. Remember, intercept form is a times x minus p times x minus q. Well, if we take a look, here is x minus p. There's no p there, so one of my intercepts is 0. You can see that on the graph. Another intercept, x minus q, is 46, so q equals 46. That's right here. All right. Well, how far did the ball fly? How far was the football kicked? If we take a look, it started at x equals 0. It ended at x equals 46. How far was the ball kicked? The ball was kicked 46 yards. All right. For part B, what is the maximum height? Well, the maximum height occurs at the vertex, so we need to find the vertex. We'll start by finding the axis of symmetry. And that means we need to average P and Q. Add them up, divide by 2. We see that the maximum height happens 23 yards downfield. And then we can plug that in. Y equals negative 0.026 times 23 times 23 minus 46. All right? We will calculate those out. And we can see the maximum height is 13.754. Don't forget your label, yards. All right? And we did that simply by finding the vertex. All right, another example we got here, graph the function, label the vertex, axis of symmetry, and x-intercepts. Well, since it's in vertex form, the first thing we want to do is find the vertex. All right? Look right here and there. Our vertex P is 4. Q is, you need to go the opposite of what you see. Q is negative 1. So our intercepts are at negative 1 and 4. So that's negative 1, 0. That's 4, 0. Now we need to find our axis of symmetry. Axis of symmetry, to find that, we simply average our intercepts. So we'll take 4 and negative 1 and average them. We get 3/2, or you can say 1.5. Our axis of symmetry should be halfway between the points at 1.5. And finally, we finish this up by finding the vertex. We know the axis of symmetry, so we'll plug that into our equation. Plug 1.5 in, we got 2 times 1.5 minus 4, and 1.5 plus 1. Calculate that out. We get negative 12.5. So our vertex is right here. We connect them. And there is our parabola with our vertex at 1.5, negative 12.5. Another example, this time we have a negative value for A. It's not going to change how we do the problem. Right? We're still going to find our intercepts first. P in this case is negative 1, Q is 5. So we'll plot those. We got our intercepts. Label them. Then we need to calculate our axis of symmetry. We'll average them. 5 plus negative 1 over 2, that's 4 over 2. Our axis of symmetry is at 2. And finally, we finish it up by finding our vertex. We plug 2 into the equation. Negative 2 plus 1, 2 minus 5. Our vertex is at the point 2, 9. Plot that information, and we'll connect to get ourselves our parabola. Now, we've talked vertex form. We've talked intercept form. Now we're going to talk briefly, how do you go from these forms to standard form? Standard form is ax squared plus bx plus c. Powers lined up in decreasing order and like terms combined. Well, for intercept form, you simply FOIL it. Or some of you use the box method. You simply FOIL it and combine like terms. Right? So looking at an example, we got y equals -2 times x plus 5 times x minus 8. We want to put that in standard form. Right? We'll start by FOILing right here. Right? So we will do y equals -2. I prefer the box, so I'm going to draw the box. Some of you like to FOIL. It's the same thing. Remember, your FOIL just ends up being what's inside the box. So it's going to be x plus 5 and x minus 8. Right? X times x, we get x squared, -8x, 5x, and -40. As I look at this, this one's O, and this one's I for those of you that like the FOIL method. All right, so when we box that up or FOIL it out, we got x squared minus 3x minus 40. However, we got parentheses. We don't like parentheses in standard form, so we will distribute. We got y equals -2x squared, distribute, plus 6x plus 80. And now we got it in standard form. So review. We got vertex form, y equals a times x minus p times x minus q. We can find our x-intercepts. They are at p and q. Those are your x-intercepts. And we can find our axis of symmetry simply by averaging those. P plus q divided by 2. And if you want to find your vertex, you're going to plug in your axis of symmetry into the equation. Simply plug and chug. You already know your x value. Calculate your y value and you can plot it.